Live with the Louhs with your hosts, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Louh, where we will connect our Orthodox faith to day-to-day living and relationships to our family, our work, and our view of ourselves. Father Nicholas is the priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, and Dr. Roxanne is a licensed clinical psychologist who uses her extensive training in private practice. Questions are welcome by calling 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-2346. Here now is Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Live with the Louhs. My name is Father Nicholas Louh, and I'm the parish priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church right here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm so blessed that you're taking time to join us on this Tuesday, January 31st. Due to Live with the Louhs, our show marries both faith and psychology to give you some practical principles that you can live by to guide you in your walk of faith. So thanks so much for joining us. Our show airs every single Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Before we share with you tonight's really important topic, I do want to encourage you, as I do every week, to stay connected to us on our social media platforms. Friends, we're on Instagram, Facebook, we're on YouTube and Twitter, all under the headings of The Louhs. And that last name is spelled Louhs. In fact, all of our sermons that Roxanne and I collaborate on are all found on our YouTube channel. Again, that is under The Louhs, Louhs. And if you're interested in receiving one of our daily do us a favor, help us to make a difference in this world. Share them with your friends and family. In fact, on that constant contact email that you're receiving, there's an opportunity for you to simply just share it to your contacts as well and help us to spread God's light, make a difference in this world. And before we also share with you the topic for tonight, I do want to encourage you all, if you haven't received our book, Renewing You, and you're looking for some renewal in your own life, I think every one of us need renewal in our life, check out our book, Renewing You, A Priest, a Psychologist, and a Plan. You can find out all about it right here at Ancient Faith. Just go to store.ancientfaith.com. That's store.ancientfaith.com. So let's get started. You know, friends, for many of us, one of the biggest struggles that we find in our life is trying to set our priorities straight. In fact, one of the most important New Year's resolutions that people oftentimes write down, priorities. Because we live in a world where we're constantly being tossed and turned into a million different directions. Just the other day, I heard someone telling me, Father Nick, I'm just so busy. I'm just simply moving from one thing to the next. I'm just having a difficult time simply catching my breath. Let me ask you, as you hear my voice tonight, if your life was on a scale, would you be able to say that I'm doing exactly what God intends for me? That it's been great for me, that I'm spending my time and living my life right? How would that scale look like? You see, for many of us, and I'm including myself in this, for many of us, we struggle because the world that we're living in is oftentimes telling us that more is better. Go do the next thing. And for many of us, what we don't realize is that's impacting us. One story that I oftentimes share with when we travel and do retreats, as well as in our book, is a time in my life where I struggled with this. And I still do at times, but especially early on in my ministry as a priest. For many of us as priests, we struggle to know when to turn it off because there's really never a time to turn it off. There's always this constant moving forward and constantly trying to find the next thing. But what we don't realize is how it impacts not only us spiritually and emotionally and physically, but also how it impacts our family. I can remember early on in my priesthood when my son, came into my office that I was working on and working on my sermon for that. And I was working on my sermon while at the same time talking on the phone, and he kept kind of tugging at me. He was only about 5 or 6 years old and kept tugging at me to get my attention. And I finally got upset with him and really just kind of snapped him and said, not now, not now. Maybe you found yourself doing that as well with your family at times, because I was so preoccupied with doing the work that the church needed and answering and being on that call. Well, eventually I got off that call and finished up that sermon, and my son said to me something that truly transformed my ministry. He said to me this. He said, Baba, which is dad, he says, Baba, you're better at being a priest to the people than you are to us. A 6-year-old said that. And I thought to myself, what am I doing? Here I'm trying to build up God's kingdom, build up the church, and yes, there's beauty in that, but at what cost? Here I was trying to do something that I thought was right, while at the same time, I was losing my family. Again, let me ask you, if your life was on a scale, would it be balanced? Would you be doing what God intends you to do? And so what I thought I'd do at the top of this show is share with you what you need to be looking out for. Because what we don't realize is that oftentimes this desire to do more is oftentimes a spiritual battle. Because I oftentimes tell people that if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. He'll just make you so busy in your life that you can't spend time doing the things that God desires for you to do in your life. So I'm going to share with you 5 areas that you need to look out for. And please, if you have some time and a pen and a paper, write these down. Here's number 1. One of the things that you need to be really looking out for and realizing is that when you are preoccupied with so many things, the risk of sinful choices increases. Like when I'm depleted, I'm oftentimes unstable. I oftentimes tell people that the enemy will always speak the loudest in your life when you are the busiest in your life. So when I'm tired, that's when the enemy loves to set a trap. He's not looking for the trap to set right after you leave church, when you're spiritually filled up, when you feel like you can go out and conquer the world. No, he waits for you to be completely exhausted. And that is where he sets the trap for your life. I used to live in Boston, and that's actually where I went to theological school, both in my seminary and my doctorate work. And one of the things that you'll notice about living up in the Northeast is that you don't really get these massive rainstorms that we get down south in Florida. Sometimes it's just a little at a time. Like there's just like this little bit of rain. It's called a drizzling type of rain. When we're up there, it's just this constant rain that oftentimes will saturate the ground, so much so that it saturates it and destabilizes it. And it is in those times where you get these mudslides, they shut down roads, and for many things, it disrupts everything. In the same way, it's not the big storms that we get, but it's that drizzling type of busyness, that drizzle that kind of just weighs us down and eventually destabilizes us. And that's why Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 21, verses 34, amazing Bible verse for you to remember. He says this, "Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with dissipation, drunkenness, and the worries of life. And that day will close in on you unexpectedly, like a trap." In other words, reminding us of this spiritual battle. Notice that your heart, it's sucking the life out of us. It's that slow little drizzle as we've been talking about. So some of you are more tired as you're hearing my voice than when you finished the work week last Friday. You're still in that trap. And that trap, the culprit of that, is the pace of our life. So number 1 is to be on the lookout for the risk of sinful choices increases. Here's that when I'm tired, my emotions are all over the place. Like the chance for me to be angry is a lot higher when I'm in a hurry than when I'm not. So check this out. You know, when you're late, you're all one of these, oftentimes these people that are on the drive, that when you're driving, you can be kind of like a mean driver. You can be impatient when you're late. And you greet people oftentimes and say things inappropriately on that road. But try doing something opposite, like go to something 30 minutes earlier. So then when you're driving, you could be like, "No, please, you go ahead," and you're not in a rush. The culprit here is the hurried lifestyle. So if number 1 is the pace of life that we're so busy with, the number 2 is that the culprit is that we're just living a hurried lifestyle. And for many of us, we're operating at the edge of our capacity. A great Bible verse to remember in this section is the book of Job, chapter 9, verses 25, where it says this, "Are you experiencing any joy? Do your days just kind of merge from one day to the next? That you go from Friday to Monday, never take that time to just enjoy your life? Are you just simply wandering around from one day to the next?" The culprit could be that you're simply in a hurried lifestyle. Here's number 3. When I'm constantly unable to catch my breath, when I'm not setting my priorities correct, number 3 is I am going to be less productive. And now I'm going to challenge you, friends, to challenge what you've been oftentimes taught. And that is that we think by doing more that we accomplish more. This is not true. For many of us, we have our hands in so many different baskets, and we think we're productive. But study after study reveals to us that the more hands that we have in the different baskets that we're in, it's actually the opposite. Yes, we may be having our good at everything. I heard someone say that, that more is better. Can I just encourage you to remember, we can do less with more and more with less. Listen to the book of Proverbs. It says this. This is Proverbs chapter 21, verses 5. It says, careful planning puts you ahead in the long run, and hurry and scurry puts you further behind. Let me say that one more time. Careful planning puts you ahead in the long run is we're getting further behind. Another verse says it like this in Proverbs chapter 19, verses 2. It says, a person in a hurry makes a lot of mistakes. And I could totally relate to that. Here's number 4. I'm just basically sharing with you, friends, 5 areas to look out for when we find ourselves just in a hurry, when we're unable to catch our breath, that when we don't have the right priorities in our life, these are oftentimes how they impact us in a negative way. So when I'm in a hurried lifestyle, I can also feel empty inside. I think that for many of us, we can get to the end of the day having worked so hard and think, for what? Like you even hear people say, I thought that was going to satisfy me. I thought that was going to bring me some happiness. But the more I attain, the more I work, the more I get done, even the more I have accomplished, it never really scratches that itch that I have after all. Psalm 39 deals directly with this principle. It says this, we are merely moving shadows, and all our busy rushing ends to nothing. I love that. We are merely moving shadow, and all of our busy rushing, it ends in nothing. Let me give you an important concept that is a misnomer that many people believe. People oftentimes think that burnout comes from too much activity. And again, friends, if you read time management books and being a priest, but I enjoy it because I find life in it. And oftentimes it's also feeding me as well. So there's some activities that actually restore life back in you. But can I tell you that it's not a matter of how many hours you're doing something. It's when you're finding the rest between that. Because burnout is not about how many activities you do. Burnout comes from doing things that have no purpose. In other words, it comes from doing things that don't restore and renew you. I oftentimes like to say it like this: activity minus purpose, that's what leads to burnout. Activity minus purpose will lead to burnout. And here's the last one, that when we're finding ourselves just so busy, when we find ourselves doing things, so many things, and never taking a break, never able to catch our breath, remember me telling you this, that when we're living that hurried lifestyle, we will not be able to hear God. I had someone tell me the other day in confession, they said, Father Nick, I just can't hear God. I just wish God would be speaking to me. Is God speaking to me, Father Nick? And I oftentimes tell them that we have so many voices that are speaking to us that's why the book of Psalms says this: be still and know that I'm God. In other words, it is in the stillness, the quietness, friends, that we all need, that we can hear God. You've heard me say this on the show many, many times before. God does not have a speaking problem. But we have a hearing problem. And the only way that we can hear God is to start quieting down the voices that are occupying our mind. Let me go back to that initial question. If your life was a scale, are you living it correctly? Is it the way that God would see it? Is it balanced? If not, what are the voices that are in your mind, those things that you have to do, that God would be saying, hey, those don't need to be on there now. And they don't all need to be occupying the number one area of your life. Are you taking time to simply be still with God? So let me go over those 5 with you one more time. That when you are in a hurried lifestyle, you need to realize that the risk of sinful choices increased. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down. Number 2 is that when you're tired, your emotions will be inconsistent. They'll be all over the place. They'll fly around, and your life will be flying from day to day without you seeing any joy. That number 3, that you'll find yourself that when you're living that hurried lifestyle, contrary to one of the biggest myths that we've been told, we will be less productive. Remember, less is oftentimes better. Careful planning, as the book of Proverbs says, will put you ahead in the long run, and hurry and scurry will put you behind. And when you live a hurried life, chapter 46, verses 10, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this break, friends, I'm going to share with you some core practical principles that you can apply in your life to set the priorities straight in your life. Stay right with us.
Live with the Louhs with Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne will be back in a moment. Give them a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. They would love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Father Nicholas Louh.
And I'm Dr. Roxanne Louh.
And we're the hosts of the Tuesday evening live call-in show called Live with the Louhs.
As many of you may be aware, our program is really quite simple. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist with a private practice, and Father Nicholas is the priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, Florida. Together, we seek to assist our listeners with the spiritual and psychological principles that help us contend with the things of this world that separate us from Christ and that prevent us from leading healthy and productive lives.
And in this sense, friends, our show is really all about you, the listener. And we've heard from countless individuals who have benefited from it greatly, sharing with us what they've learned and how it has changed both their souls and their minds for the better.
Are you one of these people? Have you heard something on Live with the Louhs that has improved your approach to faith and life? If so, you should know that this program, which is made lovingly for you, is also dependent on you for its continued existence.
That's right.
If you're not already doing so, would you please take a moment to consider right now adding your contribution to those of the other Ancient Faith radio fans who help keep shows like Live with the Louhs on the air for you.
And you should know, friends, that's an easy process. Just go to ancientfaith.com and click on the donate button. It's in the upper right-hand corner. We encourage you, be a participant, be a partner, become an Ancient Faith radio donor today, friends. And we thank you in advance for your support.
We're back with Live with the Louhs and Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne. Do you have a question for the Louhs? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here once again is Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Live with the Louhs. We want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this Tuesday, January 31st. You know, one of the things I want to remind all of you about is our daily inspirational messages. You can go and find them on our Louhs.com website. All you have to do is simply go to thelouhs.com/subscribe. And all you have to do is simply put in your email address. And every morning in your email inbox, you'll receive one of our daily inspirational messages. And as I shared with all of you at the very top of the show, if you find these things beneficial, do us a favor and share them with your friends and family. I also do want to about how we set our priorities straight, because we live in a world that's constantly telling us what our priorities need to be. And I oftentimes tell people, if you don't set your priorities, someone else will. And we're living in a world where we see that happening for all of us. And I've been constantly using this kind of metaphor of this scale, if you will, and asking you, if your life was a scale, is it in balance? Would God look at that scale of your life and say, you're living in balance? Do you think that you're fulfilling and doing what God needs you to do? And on the top of the show, we shared these 5 areas that we all need to be looking out for, areas that cause us a great deal of stress, this spiritual battle that we can be experiencing when we find ourselves being pushed and pulled into just a multitude of different directions without having our priorities straight. And so definitely, if you're just tuning in now, definitely go and listen to the first half of the show, because it'll be very beneficial for you. But the second half of the show, I really want to share with you several principles that I believe are so at the core of setting our priorities straight in this 2023 season. And again, as I mentioned, if you don't set your priorities, someone else will. And I want to really kind of share with you this beautiful Bible verse that comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11. And here we see this, a verse that I think we've shared on the show many, many times, where Christ is seeing what many of us are going through already in this world today. He's seeing people being so busy and so weighed down with the worries of this world, the distractions of this world, and he's reminding them of an important principle, and I want to share it with you. He says this, "Come all of you to me, all of you who are weary, tired, and burdened." And let me just pause. Would you agree with that you may be in that little category? You're just tired and burdened right now? "And I," Jesus says this, "will give you rest." In other words, he's saying, be careful. There are a lot of things that you're going to think that are going to satisfy that itch that you have. None of them will. If you fit that category, he's saying, only I can give you rest. He continues, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Now, let me just pause. Many of you already know this, but that yoke is an instrument that they would used to put on the oxen as they would till the ground, the earth. And basically, it would connect 2 oxen together, or 2 cows together, or 2 donkeys together as they would navigate down and tilling of the garden there. But in many ways, what he's saying is, in life, you and I are yoked to something. For you and I, we may be yoked to our to-do list, yoked to our work, yoked to our worries. And how do you know what you're yoked to? It's what you spend the most time dwelling on. In other words, what you spend the most time dwelling on is what you're being connected to. And whatever you're connected to is navigating your life. For this reason, he's saying, take my yoke. In other words, connect and learn from me. In other words, if you stay connected to me, I'm going to show you what that looks like. He continues, "For I am gentle and humble in my heart." And this is the most amazing statement. It says, "And you will find rest for your souls." You know, many people don't realize this, but in recent studies, it's sharing with us that the impact of stress in our life can impact our body physically, sometimes 6 months after that. Oftentimes when you deal with some tragedy or some struggle in your life, you may be okay in that moment, but it may physically impact you. You may start seeing yourself being impacted that months and months later. And so he's telling you, take my yoke, stay connected to me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30. So let me just kind of encourage you all that we all need to put on Christ's yoke. We need to stay connected to him. Why? Because everything else is going to try to stay connected to us. Everything else is going to try to tell us that that if we just simply stay connected to this, then you'll find peace. If you simply stay yoked to wanting to make a living, then you'll just be okay. If you just want to stay yoked to having more money or yoked to having all of these valuable assets, yoked to your 401k. But what we know time and time again is that money doesn't buy us happiness. In fact, for many people, they would argue that it actually buys us a great deal of misery. And so he's saying, listen, those things cannot be the master over your life. You only have one master and no other. Whatever we're yoked to, what we don't realize, sadly, is becoming a god in our life. So let me share with you some areas that I want to encourage you to do to kind of set our priorities straight. So number one is stop for the constant push for more. This is really a mental thing for us. Because as I mentioned at the top of the show, you and I are going to struggle to find, we're not going to struggle to find things to do because for many of us, we already have a tremendous to-do list and we're constantly adding things actually to it so that once that's done, we add more things to it. And we buy into this lie, as I mentioned earlier, that more is better. In fact, there's a desire that we're living in right now to acquire. That is truly, friends, killing us. Do you know that the average American, I shared this earlier in one of our earlier podcasts this year, I shared that for many of us, that the average American is spending almost 137% of their income. Now, that may not be you, but we're still buying, thinking that if we just simply buy more, that if we just have more, that we just will impress more, that it will satisfy us. And what we're realizing is that what we do on the outside will never transform what we feel on the inside. It's like that old adage of, I just need some retail therapy. But remember what the book of Ecclesiastes says in chapter 4, verses 6. It says this. Many of you may not know this, but I'm so blessed to be serving the parish that I truly grew up with and shaped my own walk of faith. But when I was growing up here in Jacksonville, there was a lady named Miss Mackle that was an elderly lady. She wasn't Orthodox. She was just someone that was a very good woman, and a woman that really inspired and encouraged my mom, who sadly lost her mother when my mom's mother, my grandmother, was very young. And so Miss Mackle in many ways became a mother to my own mother. And so we would go there every Sunday right after church to visit her. And she used to love to share with all of us these Sara Lee cakes. And let me tell you, we used to love those Sara Lee cakes. My mom was not a big fan of sharing too much sugar with us. She wanted us to make sure that we tried to eat as healthy as we could. But one of the things that we loved about Miss Mackle is that she'd serve us these cakes. And then she would, after we'd get done, my mom and dad would stay talking to Miss Mackle, but we would go outside. And she'd say, go out there and play out in the yard. And we didn't have any toys. She was an elderly woman, but what we ended up doing was simply playing in the yard. And so we would get these little sticks. And for the young people that may be listening, I really want you to know that we just loved playing in the dirt. And we would get these little sticks and we would act like these sticks were like cars, and we would sit there and just take these little sticks, and we'd make this vroom, vroom, vroom sound like as if they were the sound of a vehicle, and we just played out there. And there was something so beautiful about simply just playing in the dirt, just simply taking the time to just play outside. And can I encourage you that, sometimes we need to just simply be reminded that we need to just simply play in the dirt, to simply have a little bit of just time where we don't on ourselves things that are less, that all these other things that we're adding in our lives oftentimes are not bringing the peace that we want. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 30, it says this. It's a powerful verse. A heart at peace will give life to the body, but envy rots the bones. A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And how many of us are wanting the newest things, are so envious of what other people have and their shoes, their clothes. No, less is better. And some of us may just need to hear these two letters when it comes to wanting more things and wanting to add more things to do and having this constant push for more. Remember these two letters, N-O, no. It is always easier to get in than to get out. We just need to do less. We don't need more. Here's number 2. So if number 1 was stop for the constant push of more, I think number 2 is so important, friends, and that is to keep the Sabbath day holy. Let me just tell you this, friends. We need to have a day where we simply spend it the way God intended it to be. But leave one, at least one, to do what God wants us to do. You know, for me, it's Sundays are not really a day of rest for me because, I'm in church and in liturgy and love liturgy and love being with the people. But it's oftentimes a day that I'm with people. It's not an alone time. It's not a quiet time for me to self-reflect. But one of my big days for me is on Fridays. That's the day that I take to just simply get recentered and regrounded into what God yearns for me. And oftentimes I take these walks, and during those times in those walks, friends, I don't really kind of pray outwardly. I'm not telling God what I need him to do. I'm simply saying, God, speak to me. What is my assignment today? What is the areas about my life that I need to work on? God, let me hear your voice working inside of me. And so can I just encourage you to have a day where you're simply getting grounded with Christ, a day dedicated to him. Let me ask you, do you have a dedicated day to Christ? You know, the word Sabbath means to stop. It's one of its meanings means to stop. And so it's great to come to church to praise God, but go home on that day. Spend it with your children. Not necessarily watching football, but spend it with your wife and your kids, and maybe go for a bike ride or go for a walk. Maybe just spending time talking about what God means to you, to your family, witnessing your faith to them. Maybe it's just simply saying a prayer as a family, but you're keeping that Sabbath day holy. You're keeping that day holy. You know, I love this Bible verse. It says, reverence to God will add hours to your day. That's found in the book of Proverbs. Can I just tell you, you will accomplish more if you will stop and simply sharpen it when we spend more time with God. We just need to take that time to make that Sabbath day holy. And here's number 3. We keep that Sabbath day holy. We make sure, friends, that we're simply slowing that constant push for more. And here's number 3. We all in this 2023 need to get close to Christ. Now, some of you may hear this voice and say, Father Nick, I'm already listening to this podcast. I'm already close to Christ. Listen to my voice. Get closer. Get closer to him this year. Allow this year to be the year of 2023 that you fall more in love with Christ than in any other year, that you would go deeper in the pool of faith than you've ever been. You know, I love how the Bible says that Christ is the chief shepherd. In other words, he is the Lord over our life. I love how it says in the book of Psalms chapter 23, it says this, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me to lie in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters, and he restores my soul. Let me ask you, who is shepherding your life? Who is a desire to acquire or more is better, or just keep making more money and more assets? And no, let me tell you something, friends. Every one of us has a shepherd, and we need to have that as our prayer, just like David did. That not everything is, it's only one thing. The Lord is my shepherd. When I am having him lead my life, I shall not be in want. When he is my shepherd, I don't have any needs. When I get close to him, guess what? He makes me to lie down. You see, if you were to spend time with Christ and ask him, Lord, what would you say to me? I think the first thing that he would say to all of us is, just lay down. Why does he lead us beside quiet waters? Because he wants to restore our soul. Remember the heart and how it gets messed up. If you give him a chance, he will restore your soul. And so, friends, as I'm leaving you today, I just want to encourage you with this final principle, that today is a decision day. Today is an opportunity for you to set the priorities straight in your life. And so I'm encouraging you, remember, if you don't set your priorities, someone else will. So go out today and remember, stop the constant push for more. Stop this desire to acquire. And remember, it's better to have only a little with peace of mind than to be busy all the time. That you would make sure to keep the Sabbath day whole time in prayer. Spend more time in church. Spend more time fasting. Spend more time allowing God to speak into my heart. Allowing him to recognize that when he occupies my life, I will find rest in my life. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us on this Tuesday evening. As I mentioned earlier, please, if you haven't registered to receive our daily inspirational messages, please do so by going to our website at thelouhs.com/subscribe. And all you have to do is simply put in your email address and receive every single day our daily messages. And if you find them beneficial, friends, please do us a favor, share them with your friends and family. I want to thank Matushka Trudy, as she does such an extraordinary job every single week in producing our show, and all the great people at Ancient Faith for what they do for us. We're so blessed to be part of the Ancient Faith family. And again, if you're looking for some renewal in your life, friends, check out our book, Renewing You, A Priest, a Psychologist, and a Plan. You can find it right here at Ancient Faith. Just go to store.ancientfaith.com and put the Renewing You in the search engine, and please check out our book. Again, everyone, God bless you, and stay strong in your walk of faith.
Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne are the authors of the book Renewing You, A Priest, a Psychologist, and a Plan, which can be purchased at store.ancientfaith.com. Their daily inspirational messages can be found at thelouhs.com/subscribe. Be sure also to search for The Louhs on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Live with The Louhs is a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.
Everyday Orthodox with your host, Elisa Bielatich Davis. We get together on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. We're hoping to get to know the members of the body of Christ across all of our various jurisdictions and regions. We may worship in various languages or even on different calendars, but we have so much in common. Come get to know someone new and see how they're living out this Orthodox faith in another corner of the world. After all, every person is an icon of Christ. And as we'll see, every person has a story to tell. If you have a question for tonight's guest, we invite you to call in and join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO. Now, here's Elisa.
It is Sunday, October 30th, 2022, and we are live on Ancient Faith Radio. Welcome. I'm Elisa Bielatich Davis, and you're listening to Everyday Orthodox. We get together here on Sunday nights to meet people, to just sit here and listen to someone's story. You know, in this world, we all need a little more practice listening, quite frankly. and you know, I just find that we are divided up in so many ways. And you know, our Lord called Satan the great divider, right? Like we don't want to be divided. We need to come together much more. So we're divided up by jurisdiction. We worship in different languages. We live in different regions. And then, you know, then there's politics and all of these things. There are so many things that come in between us. And I think it is just such a beautiful project to sit down and meet people and just sit and talk to people from all over the country, all over the world, from different, walks of life, all sorts of people, because we're all living out this Orthodox faith in our own way. And we all have different challenges. We have different stuff going on. But in the end, we have so much in common, and we're really doing the same thing. And this is my favorite thing. This is my favorite hour of the week. So thank you for coming and joining us. And of course, Matushka Trudy Richter is right here producing the show, and she's taking your calls. So if you want to call in with a question, you're welcome to do it. You can call 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Matushka will answer the phone and patch you right through. And so then you'll get a chance to ask any questions you like of our guest, who is a friend of mine, in fact, a local friend. So it's especially fun to have him on the show tonight. Deacon Romanos converted to the Orthodox Church in 2012. So he's a convert, but he's been here for 10 years. And I kind of feel like that's like the perfect maturation moment, personally, at least in my life. 10 years was when it was like, okay, all of me is converted now. But so he's at St. Elias Orthodox Church in Austin, Texas. And he chants. He was tonsured a reader in 2015. And then just lately, just this summer, July 31st, 2022, he was ordained to the Holy Diaconate. And he went from being my friend Ron to my friend Deacon Romanos, which I will get used to, I'm sure. But so he has a Bachelor of Arts Ministry and Theological Studies from the Austin Graduate School of Theology, which is now called Lipscomb University. And he also did the Antiochian House of Studies St. Stephen's Course Certificate, which, of course, is a diaconate preparation program, but it's open to everybody. And he just finished it this year, and I'm just starting it this year. So I think we can both tell you it's pretty worthwhile if you want to look into it yourself. But he finds a lot of joy in the Orthodox liturgical life. He also carves icons on the side. He carves wooden icons, and they're so neat. He posts pictures sometimes on Facebook when he has a new carving going, and I love seeing them. They're really cool. So you can look him up at romanoscarvings.com, but we'll talk about that on the show, I'm sure. And he has a wife, the lovely Shama.
For me.
That's right. Now the tables have turned, and now you are in the hot seat.
Oh, here we go.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you came on the show, though. I think this is a lot of fun. And the truth is, like, we know each other. We run into each other around town at different events, but we never get to sit down and have like a long conversation about your life and your philosophy and what's going on. So this is a great opportunity, and I'm delighted that you've come on the show. So tell me, where does your story start? Where were you born and raised? How does it begin?
Yeah. Where does it all start? I guess it all starts when I was born. I was born in Houston, but I try not to announce that too loudly. I like to actually consider myself an Austinite because I've lived here most of my life. But born in 1979. So I'm getting up there in age.
I've got several years on you, so you don't say that. But it's actually very rare for our listeners. You guys may not know this, but it's kind of amazing and rare to meet someone who spent their whole life in Austin, because the city has grown exponentially, and people come here from all different places. So, whenever you say, where are you from? And somebody actually says Austin, like the entire room goes quiet and everybody looks at them and goes, wow, really? That's so neat. Wow, you're from here. That's great. How did you...
Driving down the road and folks would wave at you and whatnot. And I think that was just that, Southern Texas hospitality that we all love so much around here. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly grown. I think the 90s is really the tech boom. So a lot of folks moved out here. And then we've had a few more booms as the years have progressed. And so we're busting at the seams here in Austin, as you know. And that's, it's a wonderful thing for Orthodoxy as well, because then you've got folks who are coming into the church quite often. And I love to see that, of course. So I'm meeting all types of people, especially being close to UT campus, all the students that come by and visit and eventually become Orthodox. And so I've gotten to know a lot of folks, younger folks, and it's great. I love being in Austin. It's a kind of a hub. Maybe someday when the kids are grown, I'll move outside of Austin, but just enough to where I can reach back in if I need to be here. But I will say Austin's kind of this unique place where So I'll tell you, I was born in Houston. Then we moved up to Dallas, and then I went to Austin, and then lived in Austin for about 4 years. And then we moved to Oklahoma City for about 4 years. And we moved back to Austin. And then stuff happened, et cetera. So we can get into all the details later, but then ended up moving to Birmingham, Austin, and back to Austin several times. And there's a reason for that. I mean, this is just a wonderful place, but if you don't like it here, you might end up being stuck here. But I've always enjoyed living here.
Oh, me too. Me too. I love that you've kind of done the regional tour there. You know, Houston, Austin, and Dallas are the three major, I guess there's San Antonio, but they're really three major places to live in Texas. So you've done the full tour. You threw in Oklahoma and Alabama. I love it. That's fantastic. Yep. Well, so tell me, so as you're growing up, like, what did your parents do? Were they moving around somewhat, or like, what was your family like?
Yeah, so in Houston, when I was born, my parents did. So my father was actually a police officer in Sugar Land. So they actually split when I was around 2 years old. But he did actually end up dying in the line of duty July 4th,
Wow.
that was in Houston, we didn't live there too long when I was a child. I was 2 years old and they split. And then my mother took my sister and I up to Dallas, and we lived with my grandparents for, I think, a short time. I don't know how long it was. But my grandparents are just, we're going to have to go back to talking about them because they were strong influences in my faith. And still are. My grandfather just passed away about a little over a year ago. But my grandmother, she's probably listening in right now, but such a great supporter and has been very integral in my faith formation as I was a youngster. But anyway, in Dallas, we lived there for about 2 years. My mother remarried, and then we ended up moving to Austin because he had a job out here. I want to say he worked for IBM, but I'm not quite sure, but banks and whatnot. My mother was going to school and working to get her career going. And she's really made herself successful along the way as well. She works with environmental, honestly, it's so up there in what she does that I don't know exactly what it is she does. But she's so smart and she knows what she's doing. She's a consultant for environmental stuff. Let's just say that. And she's good at that. But anyway, moved back to Austin, and then my stepfather's job moved us up to Oklahoma City. So that's why we ended up there for a few years. And then his job moved him back down to Austin. So we were back in Austin again. What did they do for a living? That's kind of what my mom did, what my father did, and my stepfather did. So didn't know if you wanted to go any more deep into that. But.
No, that's interesting though, and that sort of explains kind of the moving around and stuff. But what a beautiful
there was
thing.
Lots of moving around. Yeah,
what a beautiful thing about your father, and what a neat thing to have memorials like that to him. May his memory be eternal. But okay, so tell me about your grandparents. So you only lived with them for a short time, but they were a big influence. But so I guess they were in Dallas, so they were never more than 3 or 4 hours away, right?
Yeah, so they were in Dallas for a lot of my childhood. They did move to Houston at some point. And then, so still, either way, it was very easy to visit them. So we were always visiting the grandparents and seeing them. This is on my mother's side. And they, I just remember some of my most vivid, good feeling memories are with them, just staying up at night and having deep theological conversations with my grandmother and talking about, God. And she would, of course, try to get us to memorize Psalm 23. If we got it right, we'd get a candy or, whatever. And so she was just so strong in faith, still is strong. And so, and he was one of those people that he didn't just know the Proverbs and the Bible and everything. He actually lived it. And his life is such a testament to that, aside from Jesus and the saints and whatnot. But my grandparents are definitely people I look up to being at some point in my life. But it is a high goal. They're such great folks. But he was so wise, and everybody just knew that about him. He would not speak unless it needed to be said. And when he did say something, it was always, it always meant a lot. Anyway, I miss him dearly.
Oh, that's lovely. That's really lovely. Well, may his memory be eternal too. What a wonderful thing to grow up with role model. Or there's like a sense of coming from a place where your father was heroic, your grandparents are these beautiful examples of faith. Like, what a wonderful thing to grow up feeling like on both sides you've come from just like really quality, wonderful people. I would imagine that would make you feel like, you have a lot of, I don't know, actually, I guess it could go either way. It could either make you feel like you have a lot of potential for leading a really quality life, or it could make you feel like you're just never going to live up to it and just give up. But I have a feeling it made you feel like you wanted to live into that you wanted to live.
Well, yeah. That. I mean, I feel like, I don't feel like I could have achieved any of the things that I've achieved if it weren't for, the godly people in my life, my wife, just all these different people who have been so patient with me and so loving towards me and gave me the opportunity, I guess, to do things that I thought I could never do. It really has been a blessing, and it's really been something that I don't take lightly. I really do appreciate everything that has been given to me. And I hope that someday all of everything that I've been given, I can also, do that. I mean, why wait? I can continue to do that now, but, just continue to live that sort of life for other people, give other people that opportunity. And of course, trying to do that with my children and trying to find ways that they can find their potential and be godly people in the world. And in such a crazy, messed up world we live in, we really, I would love to see my children in that as well. Anyway, absolutely. Going on and on about that.
Thank God. No, that's beautiful. I think that's absolutely wonderful. I love that. So tell me, what kind of a kid were you? Like, were you,
yeah.
If you can see God's hand in your life, I sort of imagine that you were faithful all of the time, like as a kid as well, that you were really Christian.
So I think when I was a young child, I would have designated myself as faithful. I did trust in God quite a bit. We were not big on going to church every Sunday, so we didn't do that. I was actually baptized in the Methodist Church, a United Methodist, and my family has always kind of been United Methodist on my mom's side. But we weren't real big in going to church, so that wasn't really something that became part of my life until later. But I was faithful. I did believe. You go through those teen years, and of course, everything kind of goes out the window. And that's exactly what happened with me. I became pretty rebellious, but I would say I was quietly rebellious. Like, I don't think my family knew how rebellious I was. My sister's going to kill me, but she was rebellious, but she was openly rebellious. Whereas I was rebellious and I was quietly rebellious. Was there. And I always had a sense that I needed to trust in God, but I never really, I didn't appreciate Christianity. I saw a lot of hypocrisy in Christians, the basic stuff that turns a lot of folks off from Christianity, is what I experienced. And so I didn't really want to have anything to do with it as a teenager. And thank God that changed. We can get into that later. But anyway, another thing I will say, when I was a young child, I was very interested and curious about things and how things worked and functioned and stuff. So I would always take apart radios and, electronics and things. And, my parents would come into my room and I'd have something totally torn apart. And are you going to put that back together? And no, I'm not. I just wanted to see how it worked. So,
I'd like to put it back together, but I don't think it goes back together. That's funny. I had a brother like that. Yeah. He was like, well, it's not that I don't want to put it back together. It's just not going to work. So I took it apart. Yeah. Sorry. But, that's lovely though. So did you end up studying kind of like engineer kind of stuff because of that? Or like what direction did you end up taking like in high school and then college afterwards?
Yeah, funny you should say that. My grandfather was an engineer, so he had the engineering mind. When I was in my rebellious phase as a teenager, I didn't have any kind of like, I want to be this when I grow up or anything. So I didn't have a lot of like direction, I guess you could say. And when I graduated from high school, I ended up going to, a standard community college, at Austin Community College here in Austin, and I think that's actually really good for kids if they don't know exactly what they want to do, because it's a good opportunity for you to kind of get all those basics